212 Teachings of Saraha. Teachings of Saraha. Seek counteracting the faults of benefit and harm. On another occasion, when I had a vision of Mahasiddha Saraha, I asked the great Lord of Siddhas, by what means are obscurations purified? How are deities to be realized? By what means can one be freed of demons and obstructive beings? Please explain. He replied, O great being, you must counteract the faults of benefit and harm. As for so-called obscurations, ignorance of the essential nature of the ground as emptiness is called an obscuration and ignorance, and the entrenchment of such ignorance is called a habitual propensity. These cannot be purified by ordinary efforts, such as striving at physical and verbal spiritual practices. Rather, obscurations are naturally purified as a result of ascertaining ultimate reality by means of discerning wisdom. On another occasion, when I had a vision of Mahasiddha Saraha, I asked the great Lord of Siddhas, by what means are obscurations purified? How are deities to be realized? By what means can one be freed of demons and obstructive beings? Please explain. O great being, he replied, you must counteract the faults of benefit and harm. As for so-called obscurations, ignorance of the essential nature of the ground emptiness is called an obscuration and ignorance, and the entrenchments of such ignorance and all the actions committed under its influence are fortified in the domain of the substrate and are called habitual propensities. These cannot be purified by strenuously applying yourself merely to spiritual practices such as performing prostrations or circumambulations with the body, chanting recitations with the speech, or cultivating good thoughts with the mind. For example, this would be like sweeping the dust on the ground because you wish to dispel the clouds in the sky. If you wish to purify the obscurations and habitual propensities of ignorance, when all the phenomena included in the world of appearances of samsara and nirvana are ascertained with discerning wisdom as the ground of great ultimate reality, then the obscurations and habitual propensities of ignorance will naturally be purified. Therefore, you must determine the nature of the beneficial virtues of the body and speech and the harmful vices of the body, speech, and mind. Where are all beneficial virtues of the body and speech located? Where is the storehouse in which they are accumulated? By investigating and analyzing the origin from which they arise, their location, and the destination to which they go, if you find that none of them have any objective existence, then what do they benefit? By investigating what it could mean to benefit the empty ultimate nature of mind, in terms of its exterior, interior, middle, top, or bottom, you will become certain that such benefit has no objective existence. Then you will see that there is nothing more than an accumulation of merit within samsara. First, to determine the nature of beneficial virtues of body, speech, and mind, all spiritual practices of physical prostrations and circumambulations, verbal recitations, and mental good thoughts should be piled up like a heap of grain, and they should be accumulated in some place like a king's storehouse. If they are, you should be able to directly see them with your eyes, really hold them in your hands, and experience them through your senses, but it is not so. If there is an initial origin from which the beneficial virtues of the body, speech, and mind arise, then if they arise from the domain of the 5 external elements, do they arise from the earth element, the water element, the fire element, or the air element? If they do, you should be able to directly see this with your eyes, really hold it in your hands, and experience it through your senses, but it is not so. Do the beneficial virtues of the body, speech, and mind arise from something substantial or something insubstantial? If they arise from something substantial, you should be able to directly see the source with your eyes, really hold it in your hands, and directly experience it through your senses, but it is not so. If they arise from something insubstantial, there should exist some physical virtues of the body, speech, and mind that arise from something insubstantial. If this was so, then you should be able to directly see with your eyes, really hold in your hands, and directly experience through your senses the form, shape, color, and so on of these virtues of the body, speech, and mind, but this is not the case. If there is some intervening location where these beneficial virtues of the body, speech, and mind exist, once you have examined the body from the tips of the hair on your head down to the tips of your toenails, you should be able to say, this is the spot. If such a place exists, you should be able to directly see it with your eyes, really hold it in your hands, and experience it through your senses, but it is not so. If there is some destination where the beneficial virtues of the body, speech, and mind finally go, it must be somewhere in one of the four cardinal directions of the east, south, west, and north, in one of the intermediate directions, or above, below, or in between. If such a place exists, you should be able to directly see it with your eyes, really hold it in your hands, and experience it through your senses, but it is not so. Therefore, once you have determined this in terms of their origin, location, and destination, if you think that even though they don't exist, virtues bring benefit, consider, from which side is the empty ultimate nature of mind benefited, its exterior, interior, middle, top, or bottom. You should be able to directly see this cleansing with your eyes, really hold it in your hands, and directly experience it through your senses, but it is not so. Therefore, apart from the mere imputation by your own mind, when you become certain that virtue does not truly exist from its own side and has no objective existence, you will see that it is nothing more than a merely temporary accumulation of merit within samsara. Likewise, in what cardinal or intermediate direction are the heaps of accumulated vices located? Where is the storehouse? Investigate how they harm the exterior, interior, middle, top, or bottom of the empty mind. Now, if you carefully examine the streams of consciousness of people who have constantly applied themselves to physical and verbal virtues and those of others who have devoted their whole lives to perpetrating evil, you will find that there is not one iota of difference between them in terms of the perpetuation of all their attachment and hostility, hope and fear. If they are liberated, they are freed due to the streams of consciousness being freed, and if they are deluded, they are bewildered due to the streams of consciousness being bewildered. There is not even the slightest difference in terms of the streams of consciousness wandering in samsara without being liberated. Therefore, virtue and vice are different merely insofar as they generate temporary happiness and suffering, but other than this, they do nothing more than perpetuate samsara. Likewise, the heap of accumulated vices that harm the body, speech, and mind should be piled up like a mound of grain, and they should be accumulated in some place like a king's storehouse. If they are, you should be able to directly see this with your eyes, really hold it in your hands, and experience it through your senses, but it is not so. Determine the nature of their origin, location, and destination like before. If you think that that which inflicts harm is vice, consider, if it harms the exterior, interior, middle, top, or bottom of the ultimate nature of the empty mind, you should be able to see that which harms and fouls the mind, really hold it in your hands, and experience it through your senses, but it is not so. Therefore, apart from the mere imputation by your own mind, vice does not have even an iota of true existence from its own side. Now, if you carefully examine the stream of consciousness of one person who has devoted his whole life to physical, verbal, and mental virtues and that of someone else who has devoted his whole life to practicing physical, verbal, and mental vices, you will find that there is not one iota of difference between them in terms of the perpetuation of all their attachment to relatives and hostility toward their enemies and hope for the good and fear of the bad. In that case, if they are liberated, they are freed due to the streams of consciousness being freed, and if they are deluded, they are bewildered due to the streams of consciousness being bewildered, and they wander in samsara. There is no difference in terms of the streams of consciousness, and they do not transcend samsara. If there is no difference apart from merely temporary happiness and temporary suffering, they do nothing more than perpetuate samsara. If you do not determine the nature of virtue in this way, you will confuse the virtue of accumulating temporary merit with the path to liberation, so you will not achieve the fruition of omniscience. If you fail to determine the nature of vice, you will not know that ignorance of your own essential nature is an obscuration and the basis of delusion, so you will not recognize the cause of delusion. Consequently, you will have no alternative but to remain endlessly deluded in samsara. So recognize the crucial importance of determining this. If you think that even if you don't determine the nature of virtue, there is no one who performs virtue, and even if you don't determine the nature of vice, everyone will equally engage in vice, and that therefore, there is no need to determine the nature of virtue and vice, consider, their nature is not to be determined so that you won't perform virtue and you will commit negative deeds. Rather, if the nature is not determined in this way, you will confuse the virtue of accumulating temporary merit within samsara with the path to liberation, so you will not achieve the fruition of omniscience. If you fail to determine the nature of vice, you will not know that ignorance of your own essential nature is an obscuration and the basis of delusion, so you will have no alternative but to remain endlessly deluded in samsara. Therefore, determining the nature of virtue and vice is of the utmost importance. Thus, if you think that regardless of whatever virtue or vice you commit, no consequences will arise, you are wrong. Since the virtuous thought that this is virtue is a trace of the ground Shugatagava, whatever virtues you perform by way of your body, speech, and mind enable you merely to achieve the favorable states of existence of gods and humans. But you will be bound by the limitation that they will not bring you the slightest bit closer to the path of omniscience. Moreover, whatever non-virtuous karma you accumulate by way of a basis, intention, enactment, and culmination, this will consequently cast you into the three miserable states of existence, depending on the relative strengths of the motivations of any of the three poisons which complete the enactment of the vice. However, since neither of these two transcends samsara, they are nothing more than mere accumulations of merit within samsara. With an aspiration focused on the hereafter, you may enter solitary retreat, but when meditating on emptiness, you may become dissatisfied due to not gaining any desired experiences and hence exert yourself towards some other defiled virtues that seem to be very profound. Then, when seeing the excellent qualities of meditating on emptiness, you may meditate and so forth on the meaning of emptiness. However, like the aphorism, you can't sew with a two-pointed needle, and you can't accomplish your aim with a two-pointed mind, you become bound by the limitation of not being able to acquire indwelling confidence in the meaning of ultimate reality. For this reason, you must determine the nature of both virtue and vice. Apart from this, due to engaging in the ordinary activities of the three mental afflictions of attachment, hostility, and delusion, you will achieve nothing more than various defiled virtues. On the other hand, no virtue can compare to the meaning of ultimate reality. When you meditate on the meaning of this, you are free of activity by way of mentally fabricated, conceptual, virtuous, or non-virtuous deeds, and there is not the slightest distinction between good and bad in terms of their obscuring your essential nature. As the great, omniscient Longchenpa stated, the sun of ultimate, self-emergent pristine awareness is obscured by the clouds of positive virtues and negative vices. With the flash of lightning of striving to embrace and reject virtue and vice, the rain of delusive appearances of joy and sorrow falls, nurturing the harvest of the seeds of samsara as the six realms of existence. Alas, pity every single pathetic sentient being. With regard to the essence of the ultimate, definitive meaning, just as it is the same whether you are bound by cords of gold or rope, it is the same whether you are bound by virtuous or non-virtuous thoughts. When there are no clouds, white or black, the sun of ultimate reality shines in the sky of the absolute space of phenomena. By investigating the initial origin, interim location, and final destination of so-called benevolent and protective gods, you will see that they have no objective existence. In which of the objects of form, sound, smell, taste, and tactile sensations appearing as sensory objects is their existence established? If you think they exist in the domain of one of the elements of the physical world and its sentient inhabitants, investigate within molecules and atoms, examine the individual names and constitutions of the elements, and see how these gods could be of benefit. To determine the nature of benevolent gods, by investigating their initial origin, their interim location, and their final destination, you will see that they have no objective existence. If something called a god appears to your senses, there should be something you could call the god's form, sound, smell, taste, or touch, but there is nothing that can be established as truly existent. If you think gods arose from the elements of the physical world and its sentient inhabitants, to take the element of earth as an example, even if earth is reduced to particles, particles to molecules, and molecules to atoms, they are still called earth, and there is no way that something called a god could emerge from them. Likewise, each of the elements is called by its own name, not by the name God. If you think a god is something separate, consider, if a god is something insubstantial, there is no way it could benefit you as a substantial being. If a god is something substantial, there is no way you could be unaware of it when it looks after and befriends you. If you are aware of it at that time, you should be able to directly see the god's form, shape, and color with your eyes, you should be able to really hold it in your hands, and it should be evident to your senses. But it is not so. If you think a local god is a powerful, ferocious Dharmapala who lives on a certain mountain and is benevolent, how is he of benefit? If that mountain is a god, when he provides protection, that mountain should come and protect you. If he doesn't, there is no way he can be of benefit. If he dwells inside the mountain, he must have some way out. If he doesn't, he must come out by digging through the earth. If he exists beneath the mountain, then you should certainly witness him when you dig down to look for him, but it isn't so. If you think that ever since the times of your ancient ancestors, if offerings are made, incense is burned, and prayer flags are strung, the god looks after and befriends you, but if offerings aren't made, disease and calamities ensue, consider, there is no way a non-physical god could help anything that is physical. If the god is something physical, when burnt offerings are made of fragrant trees, silk brocade, and so forth, there should be someone who partakes of them. But there isn't. The smoke of the incense disappears into the sky, the burnt offering substances turn into ash, and the remains are carried away by the wind. Apart from that, there is no one who takes off with them. Likewise, regarding the stringing of so-called prayer flags in multicolored silk cloth, with each passing phase of the year they decompose due to moisture, tear away and are consumed by rain, and then disappear, but it's obvious that nothing called a god actually partakes of them. On the other hand, if you think that when you went to a terrifying rock on a clay mountain somewhere, because you mined into the earth and removed boulders, there was an incredible hailstorm, with thunderbolts, thunder, and lightning flashes, and you barely escaped being killed, consider, for example, imagine that when you were dreaming last night, you went to a mountain with a snow-clad summit, grass covering its sides, forests blanketing its base, and a powerful and terrifying local god as its inhabitant. There you shouted into a forbidden valley, hacked with an axe in a forbidden forest, cut the grass with a sickle in a forbidden meadow, gouged into the earth with a hoe in a forbidden ground, and scooped up water with a bucket from a forbidden stream. As a result, a stream of fog like the tail of a yak emerged from the grassy mountainside and drifted up into the sky, immediately producing incredible thunderbolts, thunder, and lightning flashes. Although these appearances were unbearable, during the daytime today you don't see even a single hailstone. In the same way, benevolent gods are nothing more than your own subjective appearances, but they actually have no basis or root, and they have never had even an iota of true existence. If you therefore conclude that there is nothing to actualize that is called a deity, you are wrong. From the creative power of your own realization, you actualize something as existent that didn't exist before. You possess the cause of actualizing a deity from the absolute space of non-existence such that it directly appears to your senses, so you establish its existence. Not knowing that you possess this, you apprehend and actualize an autonomous God as something over there. For example, there is not even the slightest difference between blowing into a yak's horn and shouting into an empty valley. Therefore, it is said that whatever deity you actualize, if you actualize it with your own unimpeded consciousness, it is established solely by means of your own mind's concepts. By investigating malevolent demons in the same way, you will see that they have no objective existence either. All joys and sorrows are dreamlike mental appearances, so no benefit or harm by gods or demons occurs from the basis of designation. If you think demons inflict harm, consider, since they lie outside the domains of form, sound, smell, taste, and tactile sensations, that which is called a demon is nothing more than a mere name. By investigating how it can inflict harm, you will see it as not anything existent, nothing other than non-objective and empty. Out of delusion, people view the upper and lower portions of the body as good and bad respectively. Since the upper body appears to be clean, they regard it as if it were a god, and since the lower body appears unclean, they regard it as if it were a demon. This results in a continuous stream of hope and fear, and due to the tight bondage of self-grasping, a continuous stream of joyful and miserable experiences arises. All these consist of nothing more than experiential appearances of samsara, without even an iota of true existence as anything else. This is simply illustrated with the metaphor of a dream. Likewise, by investigating the initial origin, the interim location, and the final destination of so-called demons, you will see that they have no objective existence. If something called a demon appears as a sensory object, there should be something you could call the demon's form, sound, smell, taste, and tactile sensations, but none of these is established as truly existent. If you think demons arise from the elements of the physical world and its sentient inhabitants, consider, take the element of Earth as an example. If Earth is reduced to particles, particles to molecules, and molecules to atoms, they are still called Earth, and there is no way that something called a demon emerges from them. Likewise, each of the elements is called by its own name, not by the name demon. If you think a demon inhabits someone, and if you investigate and examine that person from the tips of the hair on his head down to the tips of his toenails, you will not find its dwelling place anywhere. If you think consciousness is a demon, there is no way one person could have two streams of consciousness. If you think the basis of your disease is a demon, consider, did that demon hold the disease in its hand and then insert it into your belly? On the other hand, if it strikes you with something like an arrow or a spear, of course you may retaliate, but there is nothing to retaliate against. If in a dream last night you dreamt of an old man wearing a golden crown and thought he was a king, all the old men wearing golden crowns today during the daytime should also be kings, but it isn't so. If you dreamt of an old woman and thought she was a demoness, then all the old women during the daytime today should be demonesses as well, but it isn't so. If you dreamt of a poorly clothed child and thought he was a seric, all the children during the daytime today would have to be serics as well, but they aren't. Therefore, if you think every single disease is due to demons, when you eat meat, the hand you use to cut it with a knife must be a demon, too. Likewise, if you overeat, this must be a demon. If you stay out in the sun, at first it seems pleasant, but if the heat becomes unbearable after a while, this must be a demon, too, but it isn't. Likewise, all joys and sorrows are dreamlike mental experiences. So no benefit or harm is established as existing from the basis of designation of gods or demons, and thus they are seen as nothing more than non-objective and empty. Likewise, out of delusion, people view the upper and lower portions of the body as good and bad respectively. They think of hats as clean and store them in the upper part of the house, while regarding shoes as foul and storing them down below. They regard the upper part of a house as good, as if it were a god, and the lower part as bad, as if it were a demon. To take another matter as an example, if a dark-complexioned person comes, the family may say, "He is ugly. Don't let him stay upstairs. Either send him away or let him stay downstairs." 47. Regarding the divine aspect of the upper part of a house, even if you look in every nook and cranny, you don't find the god's hideout. And regarding the demonic aspect of the lower part of a house, you don't discover where the demon lurks. Therefore, even though so-called gods and demons have never been established as real, that which doesn't exist appears to exist and is nothing more than your own delusive perception. Not even a particle is truly existent. Therefore, there arises a continuous flow of hope for the good, while holding it to be divine, and fear of the bad, while holding it to be demonic. Furthermore, due to the tight bonds of your own self-grasping, a continuous stream of pleasant and unpleasant experiences arises, and all of them are simply of the nature of samsara, without their having even an iota of existence as anything else. Therefore, this is simply illustrated by a dream. The essential point of all this is knowing the way things exist, which dispels obstacles to meditation. After this has cleared away all obstacles of lack of conviction and distrust toward meditation, you will acquire indwelling confidence and be filled with conviction and freedom from doubt regarding the meaning of ultimate reality. Freed of the obscuration of ignorance, this will provide you with mastery over the great, continuous displays of pristine awareness. This is also the root of the profound practices of pacification and the severance of maras. Do not seek any divinity other than your own pristine awareness. You will come to the decisive recognition that there are no demons other than discursive thoughts. And this recognition is indispensable for all sadhanas and rituals for dispelling obstacles. If you have such knowledge, you are certainly a great, illusory yogin who realizes all phenomena as being like illusions. O little one whose pristine awareness transcends the mind, teach this to your disciples and they may all become Mahayana yogins of this great mystery. Saying this, he vanished from sight. Knowledge of the essential meaning of this point and the nature of being dispels obstacles to all kinds of meditation. Whatever obstacles you need to dispel, this eliminates the obstacles of disbelief and distrust toward meditation. Thus you will practice meditation with conviction and freedom from doubt regarding the meaning of ultimate reality, and by doing so you will acquire indwelling confidence. Due to acquiring confidence, you will be freed from the obscuration of ignorance, acquire the confidence of mastery over the great, continuous displays of pristine awareness, and achieve liberation. Therefore, this is the root of the profound practices of pacification and the severance of maras. If you ascertain that there are no autonomous deities other than your own pristine awareness, and no autonomous demons other than discursive thoughts, you will exile the four maras into absolute space. Furthermore, this is indispensable in rituals for dispelling obstacles. If you realize all phenomena as mere illusions, by means of the liberation and guidance of this illusion-like knowledge, you will become an illusory yogin who can liberate and guide all illusion-like beings from miserable states of existence. Like the aphorism, on the basis of human existence, your accumulations of merit and knowledge are perfected, you will greatly fulfill your own and others' aspirations. Otherwise, while under the influence of ordinary mental afflictions, by merely stabbing an effigy out of anger and craving, not only will you fail to subdue demonic spirits, this will result in rebirth in a miserable realm, even though the basis of a negative deed is not completed with the triad of the intention, enactment, and culmination. So he said. He called out, O little one whose pristine awareness transcends the mind, teach this to your disciples and they may all become Mahayana yogins of this great mystery. Then he disappeared.